Tell us your name, what firm you're working for.
Cameron Stevenson, Levin Papantonio Rafferty.
Okay. And so Cameron, let me just check here my notes. Bear with me. I'm trying to find out what. Oh, yes. Okay. So this is really interesting to me because I was not, Ozempic was not in my consciousness. I mean, I guess I had heard things, but, and then somebody had told me like a story about how people in LA, in Hollywood, like I have some friends who are still in that industry. And somebody told me this story that they were talking to somebody who is a trainer out there. And as we're talking like all this Ozempic, and I had, like only in the past like month or two have I been conscious of this. And that the one thing that it's a weight loss regimen. It's not necessarily a weight loss medicine. That the trainer said the one thing that people won't tell you is that they're having to go to the bathroom all the time. And then I just saw a report that said, and I don't know if this is true, I didn't dig into it too much, that there's concern amongst supermarket retailers that their sales are down because of the exponential growth in how many people are on Ozempic. And so, all right, tell us what Ozempic is and how many people are on this drug now.
All right, so Ozempic and the other GLP class drugs, they were
GLP is
it's a long scientific name, but it's just part of the name of the scientific not it's
glucose. Is it the beginning of it?
Correct.
Okay,
correct.
Because this is a drug to treat diabetes
initially. So these companies, Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, they initially applied for new NDAs, new drug applications with the FDA to help type 2 diabetics lower their A1C, their blood sugar. That's what they, told the FDA, and that's what it was approved for. But what they always intended from day one, before the drug, even before they even filed the NDA, was we are going to promote and market this drug off-label to not type 2 diabetics, to anyone who just needed to lose 15, 20, 25 pounds. And so all of this is not FDA approved, at least it wasn't initially, but they went to all of these, they have detailers, they go to all of these, primary care physicians, all of these family practitioners, and they convince them that, hey, this is, we had this approved to help diabetics lower their blood sugar, but this will help your patients lose weight. If you have anybody that, just needs to lose 15, 20 pounds. And what they also did was they went out to LA, like you said. They got celebrities on board, some celebrities who never even took the drug. They paid them to promote this drug to make it, it's almost like a culture shockwave. I mean, the Ozempic GLP class is literally taking, not just our country, but to date, I think there are over 20 million people that are taking these injections. And what they did not tell anybody, I mean, you mentioned going to the bathroom.
Being a little leaky.
Yeah, being a little leaky. But what they, and almost what these drugs are designed to do is delay gastric emptying. So instead of your gastrointestinal tract processing naturally, it's supposed to delay that so you feel less hungry, you feel fuller for an extended period of time. But what the
how does that work? I mean, one of the things I've also heard that it's used in treating like smoking cessation or other sort of like, they're not quite sure how it works with like brain function, is it?
So the mechanism is all nerve, it's nerve related, but it's interesting that you mentioned that because there were reports in Europe about whether or not this could, there were people reporting suicidal thoughts with it. And I haven't studied that issue enough because what this litigation is about stomach paralysis and gastroparesis. Because, like you said, some people were a little leaky, but in a certain percentage of the patient population, this delaying of gastric emptying actually paralyzes the nerve endings and it stops your stomach from processing. And if, I don't know how much you've studied nerve endings, but I did a lot of it with Cauda equina syndrome, a lot of medical malpractice cases earlier in my career. But nerve endings are a very touchy, iffy thing. Some people, if you have, temporary nerve damage, it can bounce back in 3 months. It can bounce back in 6 months. Some people, if they have nerve damage, it can last a lifetime. And so these people, there's a certain percentage of the patient population that have stomach paralysis, this condition gastroparesis. They have permanent stomach paralysis. They will never be able to digest their food normally again. And so that is what we are pursuing lawsuits for at this time. But as you said, you just kind of heard about this a month ago, 6 weeks ago. This litigation is in its infancy stage. We are just now kind of, starting to peel back the layers of these documents and what this litigation is about. But it's not pretty.
Okay, so it raises a couple of things. I mean, because it feels like we have gone from 0 to 60. Literally just in the past 8 or 9 months. I mean, max, right? I mean, do you have any figures on the uptake? Because my understanding is that and you would probably know better, and this is all, well, anecdotal for the most part, is that one, I've heard that you can go to a spa and get this, you got to pay full price. Or I've also heard people say oh, my BMI is over whatever number. And so my doctor says, can prescribe it for me. Right. And then my insurance covers it. But that it's being it's everybody's adopting it. And it's once you become aware of it, you start to say something. You're like, oh, my mom's on it. My cousin's on it, or this and that.
It's everybody and it's everywhere. And
how fast has it grown?
This is a good kind of statistic for you. If you follow equities in the stock market at all, which I do, just aside from my career, Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, after they announced Q2 earnings, their stock was up 20% in 48 hours. Okay. The S&P on a good year annualizes return for investors of 7 or 8%. Okay. These two companies, and it's not just them, it's there are other, manufacturers of these drugs, but these are the two big pharma players, and their stocks were up over 20% in 48 hours. So what that tells you is that the street, Wall Street, all of the people that analyze these stocks for a living did not estimate the revenues that they were going to bring in for these drugs. So the revenues for the GLP class, Ozempic specifically, and then you've got Wegovy, Rybelsus, they absolutely shatter Wall Street's expectations. So I don't know what the numbers are going to be in Q3 and Q4, but this is taking not just America, but the world by storm. I mean, how long has everybody been waiting for a magic pill or a magic injection that you can take and lose weight and you don't have to watch your diet or you don't have to exercise? Well, that's what they're selling the public. But what they're not telling them is that we didn't study this drug enough. And the studies that we did, there is a litany of medical literature that shows that this can cause gastroparesis and stomach paralysis, and it's nowhere in the warning label. So people have a right to know what the risks are of this drug so that they can weigh the benefits with their doctor before they get on this drug. Now, make no mistake. If you're helping diabetics, lower their blood sugar and lower their A1C, that's fine. That's what this drug was approved for. But they've been off-label promoting this for years. And now it is just starting to come to fruition that these side effects are real and they're happening.
That's the thing, is that it seems like I would imagine that the uptake, the graph on the uptake of the usage of this drug looks like a tree, it just goes straight up from the roots.
100%. It's not a.
And so the idea that there are side effects that are this quickly presenting themselves,
right? Which,
if you have a small population taking this and they're taking it for a disease that is, there's a cost benefit analysis that's made with every time you take a drug, always.
Right.
And there's always some measure of danger. But if, 10 people are on the drug, it may only be 1 out of 100 who suffer this issue.
Right.
But all of a sudden, we've gone from 10 people to 500 taking it. Now we have 5 people who have this problem, and they're not being informed. We don't one of the things I was told by, and it was like, well, the thing they know about it, because it's been given to diabetics, is that the drug is safe. But how many years data do we have on this? And do we have a sample size to show that it's safe when you give it to big enough,
The
when you
much
give it
larger
to,
patient population.
like, half the country could be on this in,
Right.
in 2 years. It feels
It's Sam, it's scary. And that's the thing, is it's directly what you said. It's not the amount of people using this is not a growth of 45 degrees or 30 degrees. It is literally straight up skyrocketing. And so we are starting to see, I mean, we've been looking at this case for a while, but within the last, I would say, 6 to 12 months, the amount of inquiries that we've had, the amount of intakes that we've had of people saying, hey, I have this stomach paralysis condition, is skyrocketing in concert with the amount of people taking it.
wow. And so what how many people at this point, I mean, do you have a sense of how many people are?
We really don't, because it's just, like I said, there's only so many filed cases right now. I suspect that there will be many more filed cases in the next 3 to 6 months, and eventually, what mass tort lawyers do, we will file a petition with the JPML for an MDL, and all these cases will be consolidated.
Let me listen. A JPML is the
Judicial Panel on Multi-District Litigation.
And multi-district litigation means there are lawyers in Texas, there are lawyers in Wisconsin, there are lawyers, they all have these cases. And instead of like tying up the courts in all these different places,
right,
we're going to bunch all these together.
Right.
They have similar but not identical bad outcomes.
Right.
But essentially from the same process. The same inputs, the outputs are a little bit different, but we can come up with an algorithm to address that and the range of different problems. And we go into one court and litigate. And that process also determines who becomes the lead litigator. Is that correct?
Exactly. So, like you said, you have lawyers in every state that have these cases, and they, initially file them in their own jurisdictions. The issue is that it's not efficient to have, thousands upon thousands of the same or similar types of cases in front of different judges all over the country. So you consolidate it for efficiency purposes, and then the court will appoint, sometimes, 8, 10, 12, law firms that are essentially the leadership that drive the litigation. And of course, Levin Papantonio Rafferty, my firm, Mike Papantonio, Troy Rafferty, all of our lawyers are routinely appointed to these leadership positions. So that process has not come to fruition yet, but it will, and we will be a leader in this litigation for sure.
And if people are on Ozempic, and my understanding is like to keep the weight off, you got to stay on it, right? I mean, is it possible that you could go on it for 2 months and then come off it and keep that weight off, or is it just generally not the way that it works?
The statistics suggest that once you come off of it, you're going to regress. You're going to have, your weight gain problems back again. And that's because, people, if you study weight loss, people who have sustained, progress and they keep the weight off, it's because they change their diet or they have a lifestyle change. What these drugs just kind of enable, and I don't mean this in a negative way. I mean, I support people, needing to lose weight as long as you're aware of the risks. But, when you don't have to change your lifestyle, when you don't have to change your diet, and you just, take an injection or a pill, if you come off of that, it would stand to reason that, you're going to go back, your lifestyle is the same as before you got on the injection or the pill. So most people do gain the weight back.
So if people have concerns, like is this problem with the stomach paralysis, is that a slow process? In other words, like if people have questions, like things are happening, can you intervene and say like, the doctor says like, you're on your way to stomach paralysis, you need to stop taking this? Or is it one day you wake up, you were more or less fine yesterday, and the next day, boom, you have stomach paralysis?
Unfortunately, it's a spectrum, as most things are. It's not a one size fits all thing. Some people, it's typically not an overnight thing or a week thing. Usually it's going to happen within the first 30 days. But I have seen a gradual progression where you have, a blockage or, what's called an ileus or some sort of a delay in gastric emptying that is more so than was predicted in the efficacy in their clinical trials and their studies. And so, every human body is different. Everything affects everybody differently. So it can be an acute thing in the standpoint of, within a couple of weeks to a month. But I have seen a gradual, ileus, obstruction, and then finally the nerve endings of the sphincter in your stomach give up.
So be careful out there, folks. If you take it,
it is. And just the last thing is, you really need to have the discussion with your doctor about the risks of these medications. And the end all be all is if these companies did not tell the FDA and did not tell the doctors of these risks, how can they have that in their cost benefit analysis?
Right. And we should say, like, I'm just getting an IM now for someone who's been saying they were on Ozempic for a little over a year and take Wegovy. And you do need to make some changes for it to be effective. But that they've had success doing it. I mean, certainly a lot of people have had a lot of success.
With any medication, I would say the vast majority of the people that take this drug may not experience these symptoms. They may have the nausea and they may have vomiting and they may have some leakiness. But you need to be aware that there is a statistically significant percentage of patients that have stomach paralysis and gastroparesis. Sometimes they get better and sometimes they don't.
Well, Cameron Stevenson, I really appreciate your time today.
No, hey, I appreciate it, Sam.